So good afternoon, handy viewers and handy listeners, such as you are. And what a surprise this is. We didn't see this coming. In no way have we all gone out and bought a certain copy of a magazine. This is the blog that everyone knew was happening. This is the release of Windfinder. And I am, of course, joined once more here on my Navigating Navigators mini-series by my good friend, Mr. Conor Rooney. Say hello, Conor.
Hello!
It's exactly the same every time. It freaks me out. So diving really straight in, and as ever, this is not a card read. So it's been very interesting to see the crossover navigators that will be available to you in Fish. Conor is our sort of resident Fish expert, but this is our real sort of glimpse at the sole navigator captain in the form of Windfinder. So, what are your sort of initial impressions? Where does she sit in sort of like your arsenal of captains?
So, my initial impression is her artwork is just awesome.
Mm.
And
absolutely.
I like the nose ring earring thing.
Okay, why has there been some sort of not liking that? Or
Yeah, there's been a lot of comments about people not being a fan of the chain on her face.
oh, really?
Yeah, there's been a
Okay,
big
fine.
people not liking that. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like the sort of peacock feathery slash spirally tattoo that she's got going on her arm.
Yep.
I look forward to seeing how people replicate that. I like the sort of
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fun tattoo painting going on.
yeah. I mean, for the navigators as a whole, like we saw on Fathom all those sort of white inked tattoo work that she's got and the bandana. There's going to be a lot of stuff for the hobby side of the hobby to really
Definitely.
go to town on, which is quite cool. But where does she fit for you? Like, but in terms of Shark and Corsair, do you lament not having her as a fish, or what do you think of her as a sort of cat?
Well, I think she'd be pretty darn fun in Fish, but she's kind of I'd say she's closer to Shark than Corsair, for
Okay,
sure. But she does take some of the positives of playing Corsair that Shark
okay.
lacks.
Can you
So
what
the
would that
main,
be for those of us that haven't played 200 games with fish?
so Shark tends to, well, actually, both fishermen captains tend to want 6 influence on them all the
Yep,
time.
yep,
But Shark tends to spend all of that generating momentum, getting the ball and scoring.
yeah.
And Windfinder can do that. She's actually significantly better at tackling the ball than Shark. She has surpassed Fillet as the top percentage tackle in the game, at least
Okay,
against a 4-1 model.
right.
And her Momentous dodge is actually, I believe, more reliable than Shark's even.
Because of the
Which is
reroll.
crazy to think, because it feels like he gets it every single time.
Yeah, it certainly does feel like that.
So it's interesting when you look at her playbook. It's a lot better than the rest of the team. Having tack 5 and momentum on 2 instead of tack 4 and momentum on 3 is a pretty massive difference. So she generates a ton of momentum just like Shark when she needs to, and she gets the ball. And with a 2-8 kick with rerolls is about a 4-8 kick. So when you look at her at first, she kind of appears very similar to Shark.
Yeah,
But there's one major difference between them.
the melee reach.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the reason Shark is so good is because he's fast, and he's really the only pure football captain with reach.
Yeah, we were talking about this last night when we were saying, well, of the melee 2-inch zone footballing captains, Shark's clearly the best. And I'm like, who are the other ones? Like, who are these other 2-inch melee football captains that you're so keen on? They were like, Blackheart?
Yeah, exactly. And Blackheart's tackles on 3,
3,
so he
yeah.
struggles in other ways. So
Mm.
it's interesting because if you just look at her card, she just looks so good.
Yeah.
But coming from Fish, where both your captains are so reliable in large part because of their 2-inch reach,
Mm.
not having that and not having a traditional knockdown on her playbook means that she's way more vulnerable to counterattacks than either of the fisherman captains.
Yes, I mean, looking, it seems a reasonable point to mention that this Stormwind, this phenomenal trait of effectively a range knockdown with the benefit of an I Spy attached to it, which What a combination that is.
Yeah,
you're not.
the
Oh,
utility of that play is
so
insane.
6-inch range knockdown is good enough.
It's
Oh,
mini deadbolt.
it's a little, yeah, exactly. Oh, and by the way, you're singled out as well, but it's not singled out. So if you've got grudge match, you can also be singled out. So that's
Yeah,
that's I think
the one downside I'll say on that is singled out tends to be less useful in ball playing teams than in fighting teams.
okay. That's not
Because
something I'd know.
often the ball's moving around, which
Hmm.
means if you've singled someone out to get the ball and they just pass the ball, it loses a lot of value.
Right.
And looking at the navigators we've seen so far, they don't get a ton of value from wraps either. However, what
That's
I'm
fair.
starting to
Yeah.
realize this team does super well is force people to move the ball.
Okay, because
So,
we've seen, like, suppose with Fathom having a tackle on 2, Horizon having a tackle on 1,
and Siren being
Windfinder,
in the team.
Siren being in the team. Jeez, I hadn't even thought of that.
So, what's interesting about that is it means a lot of the things like putting the ball on a 6-1 Friday or 6-0 velocity and cover, as we've seen with Fish, Vetsakana helps with that a lot just by being able to knock it from 4 inches away. And
Yeah.
while she can't necessarily, it's not quite the same, being able to just knock someone down from 6 inches away while hitting someone else to scatter the ball is pretty darn effective.
Yes. Also, whilst we're sort of talking about character plays, full speed ahead. For anyone that's ever been familiar with, has played any time with sort of Pin Vice and Ratchet and Engineers, the ability of Ratchet to overclock people for that free sprint or charge, or Pin Vice's ability to give you an additional reach on the sprint. Well, here's an ability that does both of those things.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
The prospect, when you see Siren across the pitch from you, the sort of one thing that I mean, this may not be something that you come across a lot. I think it's the player of Fish rather than the recipient of Fish is that Seduced that is so good on Siren that makes it like a little mini Obulus, which naturally I object to as a Mortician's player. That little mini Seduce, you're going to have to put 3 influence on it, or you're going to have to charge and try and hit it on the playbook at 3. Well, now you can do that without any opportunity cost, really. You're putting 2 influence on Windfinder, and effectively you can move that 2 influence across. It reminds me in many ways of Veteran Chisel. It's like, I'm going to put some influence here, and I can, if I want, move that over there, so I can move my charge influence to wherever I need it. Oh, and now they can go further.
Well, and the crazy thing is, I did not think this ability was going to work on herself until I read it, and was like, oh wait, so she can do this on herself.
Yeah. Yes.
So whenever she charges, she'll be a 10-inch charge.
Yeah, so she's an 11-inch threat always.
Yeah.
Because there is no reason why you wouldn't do this. Or, he said tentatively, you can have a 13-inch threat range Siren who can charge someone to trigger Seduced 6 inches away.
You know what I didn't think about till recently, though? Is Siren's Seduced threat in Fish is 13 inches, because it's Walk 7, Seduce 6. The free sprint with +2 move makes that a 17-inch threat to hardcast it.
Yeah.
Which
ridiculous.
I think a lot of the time it's not going to be worth it, because you'd be so far away from your team without the ability to kick the ball that it wouldn't actually be that valuable. But man, that is scary.
And it's, I was having this conversation with, I forget who it was with, apologies, where we were talking about control teams and about, because, control is typically my style of play.
Yes.
But I put in Fish in that category, and the guy I was chatting to was like, "What do you mean Fish? Fish aren't a control team." I was like, "Absolutely,
Oh yeah,
Fish.
they are.
Fish are a control team because I have to be 12 inches away from Corsair. I have to be aware of Shark's legendary if it's not being used. I have to be aware of where I'm placing my models so that
Hag's
Shark can't just pin
legendary.
it. Hag's legendary, exactly. If that's not hard control, I don't know what is.
Yeah,
So,
well, you know me, I came from when we were back playing Malifaux, I played a
yeah,
lot of the fast control faction, and that's
yes,
basically what I play in this too.
yeah, yeah.
Shark's not as quite as controlly as he once was.
No, because you have
But that's what
gun
I kind of
strings.
love about Windfinder is she brings a lot of the tech I like about Corsair with the accessible knockdown and setup that I Spy brings, but also
Mm,
the speed of Shark and the ability to increase your teammate speed that Shark has.
yeah.
Also, 5-0 defense captain is something I've never really played, so I'm quite looking forward to that.
I think, and I may need some kind of correction. This as I furiously pick up my cards. But 5-0 and 14 certainly feels at the top end of 5-0. Actually, no, that's the
No,
same as
I actually
Midas.
looked this up. I think
Okay.
all the 5-0 captains who don't have reanimate are 14 boxes.
Okay,
So
so
it's
it's
the
just
standard
in it.
5-0 captain stat.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
But her
Piper?
double dodge counterattack is actually pretty good. You look at it on 3 and you think, but it's actually just as reliable as Shark's is on 2, and I know how many times he's dodged away from people.
Sure.
Of course, the big difference again is Shark can always counterattack, and
Yes.
Windfinder being 1 inch reach means she's a lot less likely to. So I do think she's significantly more delicate than either of the fisherman captains. But man, she being able to be a striker of the level she is, as well as being a support piece and a momentum dealer, and we haven't gotten to kind of the biggest deal on her card, in my opinion, is she has momentous damage.
Okay. All right.
I wasn't sure Navigators were going to get access to.
Now, to me, when you were saying that, I was thinking, oh, he's going to bring up at this point the momentous dodge on 2. Because
No, I
certainly,
mean that's reliable, but I kind of expected her to be dodgy. I was not expecting momentous damage on the captain because the
no,
first two
but
models we'd seen had no momentous damage whatsoever and very
correct.
little damage at all.
Mm,
So the fact that she can walk up to someone, has about a 2/3 chance to hit the I Spy against like a 4-1 on her
uh-huh.
first attack, and then if she hits it, they're now a
Knocked out.
3-1,
Yeah.
and she's tack 7, and
With
it's
rerolls.
about a 90-something% for her to hit the Momentous 2 the rest of the way, which means she's actually quite good at threatening strikers.
Oh, okay, sure.
So the reason I bring this up is I lost a game recently with Shark
Mm,
against Aaron Hype Train himself.
mm.
And what happened is I missed the first pass of the game, and he immediately got a missed goal.
Okay.
Um, and playing Shark with no damage output whatsoever, I could have ganged up on him with my whole team and non-momentously beaten him up. But if he doesn't die, he probably goes first and just gets another goal.
Yep.
So it's super risky. Whereas if someone comes in, disrupts your turn 1 and scores, you can flex much easier to Windfinder sets them up, does a bunch of momentous damage, next turn can go first and finish them off. And while
Okay.
that doesn't make you a fighty team, it does give you the option to play a 2-2 game, especially
Mm.
with what we've seen of Horizon and Siren's ability to lure, that knocking people off the pitch is definitely going to be a thing that happens.
Okay.
So they're definitely a football guild, but they are not as one-dimensional as Sharkfish so far.
That's interesting, particularly as they're a minor, and of course, this is their sole captain's choice. But we haven't even mentioned the legendary.
Yes, the legendary is very interesting.
Uh, kind of haggy.
Yeah, except it doesn't move enemies, whereas
No,
Hag's
and it
legendary
doesn't do
does.
damage.
Yeah, so
Yeah, a
what's
little bit of
interesting about it to me is I think the more value you get out of it, the worse your game's probably going.
That's yeah, because I was going to say like one of the things that this really feels like is I have to interact, if that makes sense. Like if I
Yes.
I mean, there will be times, certainly, when you will use Windfinder and there will be one enemy model within 6, and that will be sufficient to get you the 4-inch dodge to do whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yes.
Which, with her 10-inch sprint from full speed ahead, is 14, 22-inch goal threat straight away. That's not
Yep.
shabby for 2 influence, 3 influence, including the shot. So, but it's like you say, like the more I think people need to be not reticent to pull the trigger on this one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
Like,
reminds me a bit of Scalpel's legendary, which is on a 1-inch reach model where sometimes you just get diced by a counterattack.
yeah,
A lot of the
absolutely.
time, you'll probably just want to burn the legendary to not have your turn ruined by an inopportune counterattack.
100%. I can think of numerous times where I've put one of my favourite things to do with Scalpel is to hunt Flint, because that 4-1 model becomes a 3-0 model versus Scalpel, and the amount of times John locally has counterattacked with Flint, hit the wed, they go, but because I based them, I've used the legendary and pulled him back 3 inches, and then shank, 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 shank. Bye bye Flinty. So yeah, I can kind of see what you mean there. In that, although voodoo strings can impact a huge number of people, the amount of times I've used that to move more than 2, I could probably count on one finger.
The nice thing about it, though, is it functions really well as a kind of. There's 3 ways I kind of think about this character play. One is she just gets to dodge herself.
Yep.
Which I think is actually going to be where it comes most at, obviously, when either something goes wrong or if you need to get around a goalie, you
Yep.
can basically stop just outside of your goal threat if they're countercharge threatening you near another model and just dodge in, which is
That'll be
pretty
hard because
good.
it is a 6-inch pulse.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to get it off the goalie. It would have to be off someone else.
With you. Yep.
But
That shouldn't be too hard.
no, I mean, usually there are people around.
Yeah.
The other one is, and I think this is a really good one, is it's actually quite good for new players where you end up in a scrum that you really don't want to be in. And
Yeah.
you never want to use the legendary this way because it means things have probably gone wrong. But it does allow you to just completely get your team out of a scrum.
Yep.
Which is good. And the third one, which is the one I cannot wait to get, is when you hit the I Spy on someone who has the ball and it knocks the ball loose, and that ball scatter goes well for you, you can just use the legendary to get to the ball and score. And that is going to be great.
Yeah, that's horrible. I hadn't thought of that. I do like
Yeah.
like the concept of the black heart springing the trap,
Yes.
where you'll need a reasonable scrum to have formed. But let's say you've knocked down, with I Spy, you've knocked down Spigot against Brewers, and then you use Perfect Course and you just push Fathom, Horizon, Azimuth, whoever the other ones are, into base contact with a knockdown Spigot. All of a sudden, he's getting brewed off the pitch very quickly.
Exactly. You can use it to set up a scrum on the rare occasions you want to try and take someone out. And I do think trying to take players out is going to be a thing for this team because they're looking like Windfinder's momentum generation, if she spends all her attacks on momentum, is very good. But if you want to use full speed ahead or I Spy as a hard cast, you'll often not be generating 6 momentum with her like you would with Shark. Or usually 5 with Shark because he's either tackling or kicking or something. But what's interesting, and then we've seen Horizon and Fathom are not great for momentum generation. So I'd expect one of the major balancing factors of Navigators are after turn 1, you're probably going to be going second, and your opponent's still probably going to have last activation.
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. I mean, just very quickly to touch on sort of one last thing on Perfect Course, and why, for me, Perfect Course is better than, say, Divana's Daughter of Falcons.
Oh, that's a bold one.
Well, now that is not to say that Daughter of Falcons is a bad legendary. I'm not saying it's bad, but, and this is a conversation I've had a lot with a lot of people um, recently, is the single most important thing in skirmish wargaming, as far as I'm concerned, is positioning and board state.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the hardest thing to teach. And handy listeners such as you are, I'm going to let you in on a secret. It's something that no podcast will ever be able to help you with.
Yeah, sadly, that's not. It's not a great medium for that one.
No, like the great, just to peek behind the curtain for a moment, the great lie of podcasting is that skill won't be benefited by listening to us talking. That is why when you've got people that put the hours in and play 6 times a week and have 200 games with the same captain or whatever, why they're better than you isn't because they've read the card more. It's because they've used those abilities in a variety of different situations on the board.
Exactly. And I think Navigators, that's going to be even more true of, because there's so many dodges.
Yeah, and that's why I think something like Perfect Course is good, because it directly impacts the hardest thing in the game to master.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, yes, Daughter of Falcons changes the maths and does direct damage to my opponents. That's good. I'm not saying for a moment that Divana's Legendary isn't very good, but it's not as good as Perfect Course. It's not as good as Caught in a Net, which has a direct impact on where models can be on a board. Mm-hmm. If that wasn't part of the game, then we'd essentially be doing a role-playing game or playing Magic, or playing a collectible card game like Magic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where the stats are more important than this.
Yes.
So it feels a really weird rant to me to have, but where your models are on a pitch is probably the most important thing to me.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And so this legendary to me is astounding, because
it's you know what the other thing it does is it kind of functions situationally the way I've rarely but occasionally used Tidal Surge on Shark, which is paying for it on someone who's engaged to free them up and dodge them into a snapshot range for a snapshot.
Yep. 100%.
Which you can do for free with her legendary. You can basically say someone's engaging Angel because she went nimble and super shot because she's Angel. You can burn the legendary to dodge into pass range of her, or dodge both of you around, so you've got a clear path to her for a snapshot. And there's just you're right in saying it's hard to bring this over a podcast, because this play is going to, even more than say Shark's legendary or Corsair's legendary, when you use this play is going to vary heavily on how skilled a player you are with this team. And I think you basically need to get a goal out of it. Effectively, you should be able to get a goal out of it every game in some way. It should help you get a goal.
I couch that a little, just by you should be aiming to get a goal with this.
Yeah, I mean, if you miss a shot or something, there's not much
I mean, I can see this being very, very useful to newer players at repositioning the scrum. And if that means you reposition in the scrum, and that means delaying a takeout for a turn, for a footballing-based team, that to me seems massive. So yes, when you're sort of hitting up tournaments and certainly aiming to top table at tournaments, I'd agree with you. But I'd also, if you're not getting a goal out of it every single time you use it, I wouldn't beat yourself up about it. What I would say, however, is make sure you use it every single game.
Yes, and don't wait until you get more than one person. Sometimes one person is all you need.
Yeah, 100%. Like, the only legendary, in my mind, that is useful not being used is my favourite one of Rigor Mortis.
Yep, I still think that's one of the top 2 or 3 in the game.
100%, because the threat of the legendary can be as impactful as the legendary itself. And if you're listening to this and you've never played against Morticians, or you don't know what we're talking about, I'm talking about, obviously, this is legendary play, where I have all your momentum and your tears. Um, so now that we've seen Windfinder in all her glory, and I must admit, captains are always a weird one for me to judge until I've seen the entirety of the team, because of course that will change. Has the potential to change our opinions on so many different things. But now, if I can ask you, sort of turn your eye back to Fathom and Horizon, who we talked about in previous weeks in very much a fish capacity. Has Windfinder changed your opinions on those in any way?
Oh, that's interesting. I think for Fathom, no.
Okay.
Because I don't think any of her abilities you're really targeting to get Fathom with. And I actually think Fathom is one of the worst people to take advantage of I Spy. I also think what someone's going to say, so I'm just going to say it. You could put on I Spy on someone who has the ball, and it makes it pretty much guaranteed you're going to hit the Momentous tackle double dodge on a charge. Yep. But if your opponent's letting you do that, you're probably just going to win the game anyway.
Also, just to point out, Stormwind is not May.
Yes.
It's the first time you do I Spy, because it can only trigger off I Spy. Yep. They are being knocked down.
Exactly. So there's no way to set up. So you would basically have to have someone pass the ball to someone who had I Spy on them.
Yeah.
And if they're doing that,
That's
think, you're probably going to win that game.
Mm.
But I do like that she does have the what's become the Navigator's signature move of Momentous tackle double dodge on the final playbook column.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a weird thing. And I have to say, just from a purely thematic standpoint, I love what her abilities do.
I cannot wait to get her on the table. She looks so. As someone who's just played their 100th game with Shark on the weekend, I think this is the captain that most resembles why I love playing Shark.
Okay.
With the major downside of losing 2-inch reach in Shark's legendary, but the major upside of actually being able to do momentous damage and set up other people to do things.
Okay.
So I cannot wait to get her on the table. She's going to be ace.
I really just like the thematic nature of her. Just that her legendary is moving her own team around. Her character plays are focusing her teammates on things. She actually feels like she is a navigator and plotting a course for her team. And I think that's beautiful. That's really, really nice. Yeah, she's going to do stuff herself. But yeah, that sort of really nice feel of both set up support captain, a support striker. Who knew that such a thing was possible? Sorry, Skather.
Poor Skater.
Perfect. Excellent. Conor, any closing comments that you'd like to make on Windfinder?
Yeah, just we haven't seen the whole team yet, and we haven't seen the mascot, but we've seen a lineup outside of the mascot, so you can start kind of getting some larger trends, which we'll come into in later videos as well as we find out the rest. But they feel almost like hunters, but football version, in that they're way more hit and run than fishermen are, because they want to charge a lot more. They want to hit that momentous tackle double dodge and get out and in. And I do think I don't want to say issue, because this is exactly why I'm going to love them, but some people are going to hate them, is when things go well for you, they are going to feel very oppressive when they just charge in, get the tackle double dodge and score, and you have no response.
What a shock to everyone in the London meta that you're looking forward to using an oppressive team.
Yes, well, I have my specific type of oppressive I like. I like to crush people quick and fast with very little interaction on anyone's part.
And on that, I don't think there's anything I can really add to that. Perfect, Conor. Thank you very much for joining, for sharing your thoughts on Windfinder with me and the handy listeners and handy viewers such as they are. And as ever, until next time, I need a better outro.